Welcome to the Engaged by Design podcast, where we drive innovation and help you as a leader engage more learners more effectively. I'm Dr. Vernon Smith, and I'm here with my co-host, Dr. Michael Cotta.
It's great to be with you on the podcast again today. And today we're sharing part 2 of our conversation with Dr. Kimberly Jacobs. I'm really looking forward to sharing this episode with you. So no more delays, no hesitation. Let's jump back into this conversation where we left off last time. So you have this passion, you have this skill and this ability of teaching and helping to transform people. You spent a lot of time in your career working with other teachers, right? Trying to help them to have that experience that you were having and to be effective in their teaching. What are some things that you've learned from those years of experience with other faculty, other teachers, and helping them to develop?
You know, I was thinking about that over the last few days, and what really struck me, what thought kept coming to the surface is that when I was teaching at the community college, I was fresh out of college with teaching methodology background. And I had the very fortunate opportunity to actually be on campus during the day, which meant I got to go to department meetings. And I would listen then, so we're talking more than 30 years ago, I would listen then to other professors comment on students' motivation, or they were having difficulty reaching the students, getting them to learn the topic, whatever it was. And to me, it was completely obvious. But again, I was the only person I knew who came into that experience with a methodology background. And that has served me incredibly well. When I started leading a department at the university, and then later becoming leading the Center for Teaching and Learning, the question was the same. And here, this extended time between when I started and when I moved into these other roles. College faculty are incredibly passionate about their disciplines. It's why they're experts in those disciplines, right? And at the institution that I was working for, so many of them come from industry, whatever those disciplines are. They've been working out in that industry, and they come to higher education to impart their knowledge in some path, on some journey. They arrived at the university to teach. But the question for many of them, not all, because some of them are amazing teachers, but so many of them had the same question. Like, how do I get my students to do this thing or to love this topic? And so what I have learned is there's still this gap. And the answer is not as simple. I think that when that question is asked, how do I get them to do X, Y, and Z? I think that faculty are often looking for kind of that magical moment, that one thing that's easy to implement and easy to impart, and it's going to turn on the switch. And it just isn't that way. Not only is it not that way for their students, but sometimes faculty find it difficult to put the time and the effort into learning the methodology or the philosophy or the theory, or even, just basic understanding about adult learning and the philosophy that drives adult learning theories. They don't necessarily want to take the time to learn it, nor I think often they're not so sure that they need to take the time to learn it.
Yeah.
And my husband's an excellent listener. So he's always been very good about listening to me kind of talk about higher education. He's been very patient But he did one time tell me, he says, sometimes you get talking about this stuff and all I hear is Charlie Brown's teacher. Wah, 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 wah.
Wait, he said that to you out loud?
He did. He did. It was well deserved. But he also at that time, he wasn't working with people in the way that I work with people. And today he holds a position in which he has to lead a team. And so he's drawing on all these conversations we've had in the last decade about how to coach his team, how to manage the team, how to drive motivations, how to get the best out of people.
It
And
becomes
so
relevant all of a sudden when you're in it. Yeah.
it does.
Yeah.
And it's not a fast process. And I think that's, again, education is slow in so many ways. There are trends happening in higher education that are fast, but I think education as a whole is slow. And whether it's change in higher education, just thinking about the model of higher education that we're still leaning on, that's hundreds of years old in an environment that really few places. There's always a need for the traditional institution that's always going to be valued. It's always going to be the right thing for the right population. But to go through that process, getting faculty to go through that process, to learn something new, to have different conversations with the students, to kind of put the students in the driver's seat of their own success. It's difficult. It is very difficult. And I had the opportunity to have coaches as mentors in my career, and seeing them leverage coaching strategies, it was a natural fit for me. Having come from that teacher methodology process in the very beginning, it made perfect sense to me. I already asked open-ended questions when I'm teaching. It was easy to have those conversations with my students. It is more difficult for those folks that are used to a very black and white kind of a discipline where there's a right answer and a wrong answer, or there are legalities or really significant risks associated with decisions in a discipline. And so education just works so much more differently. It's so much more fluid. There's holes in it. And that's where I love to be. I love being in the gray area. I love being in those holes and kind of making those connections as we go along. I'm sure I answered your question.
What I just sort of comment on this, Kim, you're describing what I'd say is a need for upskilling. It's continuous learning that's there. But these days, and I think you've said, over the last 30 years, you've talked about how there's a need to learn methodology, to learn learning theory, to have an upskilling in that. Whether you had that in your discipline or not, it's still an upskill there. But there's also the new thing that is not so new because it's been constant, and that is upskilling in technology areas and seeing the nexus between the two, that now you've got a new way of doing things. How am I going to engage students in an AI world? How am I going to think about assessment and critical thinking in a place where students can have instant access to content and actually have it create content for them? So, the end product is still those foundational critical thinking, problem solving, integration, being able to work with others in a diverse way, and to be able to do that effectively, could communicate in oral, written, other formats. What are your thoughts on how we are right now? How big are those gaps, I guess, would be a question. You like filling those gaps? How big are those gaps?
So it's really a broad spectrum of skill sets that are right there. I've had the opportunity to work with folks that are right on the front edge of technology, and being able to manipulate the technology, work with technology, learn with it. They thrive from those things that are new and engaging. And then I have worked with folks that are still reticent. They are hesitant to embrace the new technologies. They're not sure how they themselves are not sure how to adapt their own practices to include the technologies. And so I think there's a level of fear. It's new to them. But believe it or not, we also have students that are in the same, that kind of run that same spectrum as well.
Yep.
There are those that use it a lot and those that are resistant or hesitant. I don't want to say that they're resistant. They're hesitant to use it and to become comfortable with it.
Oh, my college age students, I've got two that are just, technology. And the other two are like, you should never use AI for anything. And you're doing damage to people if you do. So, I mean, I hear that conflict.
In your own home. Yeah, in your own home. That absolutely is the case. And even in my own house as well, we have the spectrum. We have a couple of us who are very much on the front edge of it, willing to and eager to learn from it. And there are others that are in the learning process and, trying to figure out ways to use the technology effectively. I don't have a good answer for you, actually, Vernon. I don't know. I don't have my role in the CTL was. Let me clarify. I saw my role in the CTL as really trying to persuade people to adopt new ways of thinking and new ways of being and new ways of operating. And that wasn't always met with open arms. And so I had the opportunity, though, to work with everyone. I did find that I had better success if I worked one-on-one with individuals. That's that whole relator piece with Clifton Strengths.
Yeah.
I could do much better having those one-on-one conversations than trying to speak to a whole group and hoping that I have used the words that resonate with everyone, because I can guarantee you they did not, or I did not. I did not use the words that were always the right for the whole group.
But they never will.
They never will.
It's not with everyone at the same time in the same way, and this with the same words. So are there things where you were responsible for training and developing thousands of faculty over the years, right? Are there things or methods? Let me go to methods. You were talking about methodology. Are there things that you did or methods you used that helped to upskill or each of those individuals to get better at teaching using the technology, using methodology, using the community of inquiry? There's so many things that you taught over the years, right? But are there things or methods you use that seem to work better than others, even if it's not universal?
Yes. There were two primary approaches that worked best, or that what I've witnessed worked best with the geographically dispersed faculty that I was working with. One of the best ones right off the bat was to actually have other faculty do the training presentation. Hands down, they would rather listen to a peer than listen to a leader, a boss, a dean, whomever.
Yeah. Tell
them what to do. But if they had another faculty member say, "Oh, I did this. This is how you do it. These are the steps that it takes to get there." And then as long as those peers also made it a point to share the outcome, they were a lot more receptive to new ideas, new strategies. And often when we did these types of presentations, and we did them in a couple of different formats, we would do live webinar types of approaches. And we also would capture those stories and save them as on-demand pieces in on-demand training. But we frequently heard back from faculty who participated or attended, either through survey feedback or just random emails or even conversations in chats, They would say, oh, I was at this webinar yesterday on this topic with this presenter, and we learned X, Y, and Z. It dovetails really well with the topic today. So we frequently heard feedback, and we knew that they were implementing those strategies in their spaces. So that was item number one. Item number two, we developed an on-demand training environment where we housed all of our training resources. Some of those resources were policy related, so based on our policy handbooks, so kind of the must-dos and here are the ways to work with it. And then some of it was around instructional design, some of it was around the technologies, some of it was around just curricular strategies. We did things around quality matters, so good online design. We had done lessons on how to write course objectives and then kind of how to teach to those course objectives or teach with those course objectives.
You had coaching classes. There were so many things. Yeah.
So many of those. And what we ended up doing after a while, so initially when we launched that training space, it was mostly assessed through quizzes. So just evidence that they had read the material, they could answer the question. And what we really wanted to do is get to the point where faculty could build something in the training and use it.
Application, yes.
That's right. And so we weren't doing that with the quiz strategy. And so we established this 3-tiered system in which the faculty would build the thing, whatever it was. And so if we wanted to encourage faculty to build an engagement element inside their classroom, we had them training material on what engagement looked like in the classroom. And it could have been engagement on discussions. It could have been engagement in creating new announcements that are engaging for the learner in that it's a real personality. The faculty got to really showcase who they are as an individual, as a professional, as a approachable teacher in the classroom, whatever that engagement was going to look like. We built these assignments that would have the faculty building that engagement piece, and then they would submit it to us as an assignment to just review and, of course, get professional development credit for it. And so we were feeding 2 birds with 1 scone.
Nice.
And so they would get the training, they would get those professional development hours, but then they would be able to turn around and plug that into a classroom. And so no longer could faculty say, I don't have time to do this thing, because committing to the professional development piece was part of their annual expectations and requirements for teaching at the institution. And so, we're talking about holes, finding and solving problems. That was one of them. How do we get faculty willing to go into our online training environment?
Yeah.
How do we get them to adopt the strategy? How do we keep the material evergreen so that they can go back to it, reuse it, simplify our side of trying to maintain the material? And our training environment, while certainly had factual things in it, it also had a lot of space for creative thinking and critical thinking. So it was concepts that faculty could find ways to fit those concepts or fit their disciplines into those concepts and apply them in that way, instead of it just being this one-off piece. Because if we got too specific, then sometimes folks would say, well, I don't know how I'm going to use that. How could I possibly do that in my classroom? And so it's been those 2 methods of offering up training really became successful.
Yeah. I've often wondered why it is that It's not just faculty, it's others, it's coworkers, it's whatever environment we're in. We tend to rather hear from our peers,
Yeah.
especially when we have a professional identity, I would just say, and the skill sets that we're proud of, we're comfortable with. Hearing from peers that may give you an alternate way of thinking or of working that isn't a mandated approach, but a additive, developmental. I don't have the right word for it, but I'm not sure why that is, but it seems like it's human nature. Hearing from peers and working with peers seems to drop barriers and allow us to get a little better.
It does. It does.
There's a
It opens
listening,
doors.
Yeah, there's a listening that happens. I mean, I don't know how many college decisions of which college they're going to attend, a student is going to attend, a potential student will attend, is based on what their peers tell them, what their friends tell them. And
Yeah.
it's during that age of peer influence, it's really strong there. Kim, I wanted to follow up with a question for you because we talked about methodology. I want to just draw this nature. What are the things that I used to call it the academic quality design framework, but it was having a framework that faculty or at least thinking, what are the standards for design of the instruction and the delivery of the instruction? What should be common? What should be, our brand? What should be able to do? How did that? I'm just asking in retrospect, how did having a framework for quality in that design and delivery help impact your efforts in the CTL?
It certainly, so from a leadership perspective, it was incredibly helpful to have that frame to say, does this thing over here fit inside of this frame? In other words, how well have we applied this frame's concepts to your class, your activities, the assignments, the learning that's taking place? So that structure from a leadership perspective was incredibly helpful. And it gave us the framework for designing our on-demand environment that we built for training. It also, fortunately, leveraged nationally recognized quality components like Quality Matters. And so not only was it, were we able to shape it specifically for our institution's culture, our faculty, our students, our student body, the mission of the institution, the direction the institution wanted to go. That was all great. And it gave us the freedom to be creative and flexible, but then to be able to build that on a foundation of Quality Matters and basic adult learning theory was helpful. And it added legitimacy to it. What I found in higher education is that people want the data. They want to know why. They want to know what informs this decision. And so it was a really thought out, constructive approach to kind of putting our arms around course design and course delivery.
And they tend to want to be involved.
Yes.
Right? They want to be involved in the creation of the standards, the adoption of the standards, and then the implementation of the standards.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that framework was just a framework, but it was that involvement, the engagement, the participation, the creativity that changed that, and numbers change in terms of problems with courses in the design of them, but also in responsiveness to students, in the ability to understand and respond to students, which of course in an online environment is usually the number one complaint that you'll get. And, but it definitely hit that on the head. Kim, I want to take you to another effort that you and I were involved in, and we got most of the way there, but some of it was, but I'm very happy with the part of general education, because general education oftentimes comes under criticism in all of higher ed is saying it's not legitimate. But the funny thing is that the things that employers and others say that students need, because the content's going to change so quickly, but they need those general education skills of critical thinking, problem solving, reading, writing, being able to communicate well. Those are the things that are built in that foundational area. Let's talk a little bit about, I'd say, two phases. One was the rationalization. I call it rationalization because there was such a variation of how much general education and credits were involved in a degree itself to basically rationalize that so that one degree didn't have, for example, 136 hours to be able to graduate versus 120 hours. And a lot of that was found in that. And then the second part is that, the overall vision that I don't think actually they had an appetite for at the time for getting, but I see it happening. So let's talk about the rationalization first. How difficult that was. And this is a big thing. If you touch general education at any large institution, any university or college, you are like walking on, landmines. And you were out there in front helping do that. I want you to just talk about that change process and
are you saying you sent her out in front to step on the mines?
Kim wanted to go out front. Kim wanted to go out front because she cared about general education, which is really important.
Well, from this conversation, you can understand why I love gen ed. I mean, it is the heart and soul of a person's education, right? They need that broad spectrum of skills and knowledge to be successful and to be well-rounded and develop those critical thinking skills. So at the institution, we had the traditional, I'll use the word traditional general education framework. And the general education by itself in terms of the degree number of hours was the general education piece was pretty well accepted. The more challenging aspect of that initiative, and can you believe it's been 10 years? 10 years.
No, can't believe that.
No.
It was 10 years ago.
You have to almost think about general education change in decades.
You do. And it had started before then. I mean, it had started, my involvement in general education started before you arrived at the university. The harder aspect of it was changing the degrees in terms of meeting, like you were suggesting, having that consistent number of hours or where and when appropriate to do so, and having those spaces for transfer credit. We worked on policies to improve transferability of college credit. I'm chuckling because again, through that entire process, I presented time and time again. I presented to all of the department chairs many times over. I met one-on-one with department chairs, and Michael knows through Clifton Strengths, I am a relator long before I am a persuader. And I will openly admit that persuasion is dead last on those lists of 34 traits.
Which I will remind you, as a coach, that doesn't mean it's a weakness, Kim. We both know this. That's not a weakness.
It could use improvement, though. No, what it means is I find other ways to work with the individual. And that's where that one-on-one piece came through. So it was a slog. There's no other way to kind of describe those years of trying to convince folks that changing general education would be a good idea. And so at that time, we had finally worked our way toward, we had a model designed that had what we were calling a core learning component. So we took key skills. Specifically, we were working with digital information literacy, we were working with writing, we were talking critical thinking, and we were working with a civics a civic, socially minded, global type of way of thinking. And so we had designed this. And while there were grumblings, it was not a unanimous agreement. We were unable to move that framework forward. And what was unfortunate when the final decision came down and we were told, no, this is not going to happen. Move on, come up with something else. We did have a design in our back pocket that was much more similar to the existing general education framework that we had. But what it did is it opened up, and during those years, we were working with some of the fields, some of the disciplines in which they developed integrated gen ed types of experiences into foundational courses within their disciplines or within their schools. And that is the model that we ended up developing. So it wasn't foundational the same for the entire institution or for all students, all incoming freshman students to the institution, but it was more specific and it was catered to specific disciplines, and those were handled within those schools and within the discipline. But today, general education, again, 10 years later, general education is taking there's another approach to general education. And a lot of institutions have developed a much more integrated, much more broad thinking, but also driving students to make better correlations between the general education experience and their disciplines. And by embedding those skill sets and reinforcing those skill sets within those disciplines I think it's been better for the students. I believe that there's fewer questions around, why do I have to take this class? What's in it for me? What's the relevance to what I'm learning? And I think that faculty are getting more comfortable within their disciplines of saying, oh, yes, you need to have a better understanding of this general education concept or this general education skill to be more successful in this field.
I like to think about, what were the good things that came out of that effort? I mean, the first one was that students were not having to take extra hours and other for a degree, that they're able to get, the degree done in, 30, 60 or 120 hours, depending on what they were working on. The other part that I hear as a victory that, is that there was a change in mind, a change in thinking that was, and it was actually pretty early in some ways, about understanding the integrative nature. Someone says, well, I teach economics. Why am I talking about writing? Right. And this is but it all matters. And when we understand that you can do that as a faculty, a lot of it's just making them feel confident. But I saw that as you talked about, different disciplines sort of bought into it more and began making those changes, which I think, in my opinion, increased the retention and completion of students along in those particular degrees. And but I think also those are celebratory things. You were relentless in your pursuit of trying to do this, and
in a good way, relentless.
Yeah, in a good way. Yeah, not an annoying way. It was a good relentless, but it's also, I think, a change management story in some ways, is that not everyone is ready at the same time. And it does, especially for something as debated and I mean, these days, people, I finally got done with my gen eds. Oh, thank goodness, it's still an unpopular thing, but we know it's good for us, right? And we know that's what employers want. But being able to stick there and get that, it takes time. So I think there's a change management, lesson. I would have liked to have done more. You were certainly there to be able to do that. But, I think it also that lesson can be taken to others that are maybe entering into the rationalization of the degrees, or even, as we were working on before I left, is the 3-year baccalaureate degree. You can't have you need to have that integration to be able to get your general education foundation and your disciplinary things in that. I wonder if you had a comment on that. Or just celebrate, just say, yay, Vernon, yes, there were good things.
Yes, change management by itself is a challenge. I should be celebrating. You are absolutely right. We did accomplish a lot. And when I left the university, things had only continued to improve. So there had been more progress on the 3-year degrees. There had been more progress on the academic quality framework. There had been more progress on gen ed thinking. So where you and I were working together, things have only continued to get better from there.
That's good to know. And I know it benefits students, and that's the bottom line. It benefits students.
So, Kim, we've kind of traveled all around from your personal story, from your garden all the way to Target in Pennsylvania, and and eventually to some of the things that you did to help manage change. We want to give you a chance to kind of sum this up as with our final question in terms of what you think is really effective. And that is our one question: how do you engage more learners more effectively?
One at a time, and I meet them where they are. That is what it boils down to. I had said earlier that I am completely rewarded by the one person, the one student who comes back and says, "Thank you. This is what I got from it." But it's because that person was engaged where they needed to be engaged. And that's okay. That is okay. That's my contribution to somebody else's education, somebody else's progress, somebody else's success.
Yeah. It's focused on the one.
Focused on the
There
one.
it goes. Spoken as a true relator.
Yes. So Kim, if people want to, like with both you and Michael are Clifton Strengths certified coaches, right?
Yep.
So that's one thing we need to remember. You know, if someone's in the area or nationally, I'm sure both of you could help out with coaching in that leadership, especially with the areas that we've talked about. So I think that's wonderful. We can't thank you enough, Kim, for joining us. I hope it wasn't too painful. It wasn't. You survived, right? How do you feel now that it's pretty much over? How do you feel?
In hindsight, it felt pretty good. I thank you very much for encouraging and nudging repeatedly to participate in the podcast. But it's been a lot of fun. It's been great to have these conversations. I truly have missed them by not working full time, not working with either of you, and not working with the people that I truly came to appreciate and respect and love for who they are and what they bring to the environment. So I do miss that a great deal. But this has been a lot of fun. It's been good to bring up the memories.
And this is the funnest thing we get to do.
It's lots of fun, and you also have you're doing great things in the community, and we know that that third grade that influences individuals, families, and communities getting that third grade literacy. So it's just, I'm sure there's going to be more stuff there. More stuff there. Yeah.
All right. Thank you for joining us for this full conversation with Kim. We hope you had as much fun as we did. That you laughed along with us and you learned right alongside us. We just love doing this show for you.
Thank you for joining our conversation. Be sure to like, subscribe, rate, and share this podcast with a friend. And let us know how the ideas from the podcast have helped you as you have engaged by design.